The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Hi Rogers, can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes it can, although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be no more.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digital.
Good evening to you all. My name is Muntu. I am the host of the Face the Nation show that runs live on our social media platforms. That's the Alternative Uganda Facebook page and also our YouTube channel, Alternative Uganda. Every Friday at 5 p.m. here at Digitalk. I'm privileged to have retired Army General Mugisha Muntu Grigre, born on 7th October 1958. At a tender age, if I should say, I think after he had finished his final exam at Makerere University as a political scientist, he chose to run to the bush and, of course, to bring justice to this country, Uganda, along other people. I gather that in his group of people back in the day were General Biraro, and I think they have something that unites them in common, because General Biraro later alone also fell out, like they say, with the government. General Tumukunde was also with him. That's the same group. So I think there's something that they share in common. General Sejusa in the same group. So later on fell out with the government. General Muntu, say hello to our viewers of Face the Nation, sir.
Thank you, Norman. Thank you, Digitalk, for hosting me today. I greet you all, those who are watching this program.
Thank you, sir. To begin on a sad note, this week we lost a retired justice, George Wilson Kanyahamba, at 85. Maybe for purposes of having your word on record, you could share what you know about him for like a minute also, and then we shall dive into the topical discussion of why we are here to face the nation.
Yeah, way long back in the 80s, that's when we first interacted with the late Professor Kanyahamba. Initially, we were both members of the National Resistance Council, and then we were actually neighbors in Kololo when he was the Minister of Justice. At that time, I had just become the commander of the, at that time, National Resistance Army before it became UPDF. And then he later, in CA, Constituent Assembly in 1995. And we kept on interacting when I was in the army and he was in cabinet. And then, of course, later I became a Minister of Commerce, I think, and Trade and Commerce. And then later became, went into the judicial sector, where he was a justice of the High Court.
Supreme Court. Yeah. Supreme Court.
Yeah, justice of a judge in the Supreme Court. But one thing that I think consistently he was pursuing, and what he's mostly known for, is his being a stickler to the rule of law and the pursuit of justice for individuals, to see that we would have a country where all of us would be equal before the law, and that even those who would be in the exercise of power would be subject to the law rather than them operating above the law, as we still have the experience right now. It's unfortunate that he has passed on before he could experience what he desired to be in practice. And therefore, it's incumbent upon every Ugandan who wants to see that kind of state of governance where everybody is equal before the law, including even those who are in power, right from the president down, for all to know that for there to be justice, for there to be stability in a country, for there to be peace, that everybody must be subject to the law. Condolences to their family. It's a big loss to his family and to the country. May the Lord rest his soul in eternal peace.
Okay, thank you, General. Now, we're going to use that precedence for to dive into our discussion, and with a specific question: why do people hate straight people? Because if you look at his accuracy, his fight for freedom, there is a problem that the public finds with people like you or Justice Kanyahamba. In fact, I was reading somewhere that people, even in the army, hated you for being a disciplinarian. In fact, they even said you introduced what they call katebe. Those of you who don't know katebe that General introduced is when you become indisciplined in the army, that with his powers back in the day, he would put you on suspension. You have no office, you are there. Like young people say, browsing around. So like you introduced katebe. Why do people hate people like you who are disciplinarians? Because you are termed as a disciplinarian.
Basically, people want the easy way out of things. That's the unfortunate thing. People want to do things without being held to account. And that's been the culture. Unfortunately, it's now deeper than even the time when I was in the army. The most unfortunate thing, though, at the time when I was in command, we had not reached a point where there would be retirement. So basically, most of the officers and men who would not be deployed, at the same time, they would not be retired. And therefore, they would hang around. But there's also a time when someone would learn lessons from whatever wrong they would have done, and it would have been observed that they are repentant and that they could be given a new chance. They would be redeployed.
Did your katebe work
the
in your
discipline, I actually found it there.
The katebe?
Yep, it was already there. But of course, I spent quite a long time in the forces. Why it's attributed to me is because most of the other commanders didn't take as long as I took. Because, you know, if the commander has been there for 1 year, others would be there for 2 years, it would not easily be associated. But so the period I spent, 89 to 98, that's quite a while, and therefore, that's why it's attributed to me. But our main focus really was to have discipline in the army. Because the army, once the army gets out of control, the country's stability becomes quite precarious for the country.
Isn't it what made you unpopular? To
sustain forward movement.
It's what made you unpopular. People blaming you for not compromising on smaller things for purposes of either a country or a struggle or your people. And like, no, Muntu is too straight. I think on this he should bend the law, not breaking the law, bend the law, and we proceed. Which perhaps made you unpopular.
At that time, there were people who really didn't understand the strictness that I would apply. But I bump into so many who now appreciate it after a period of time. And more so when they see the direction that we are taking as a country. There are quite a number of people whom I bump into, and you find that they misunderstood me then, but they now appreciate it. Because most of the things that For example, if an army becomes corrupt to the point where it becomes a security threat, because we've seen countries where the army becomes so corrupt that it becomes part of a security problem.
Itself, which is supposed to guard and protect people, becomes a threat.
Yes. You have to ensure that the army doesn't go in that direction. Because there are means and ways in which a country can develop an economy, expand it, becomes robust, and then it caters for the needs of the army. And that's the direction always that the country needs to take, not only for the army, for police services, intelligence services, for the public service. We've seen countries where they pay well all people who work in the public sector. It's very, very important to ensure that they are stable. But before you reach that point, you must maintain a state of discipline. Because you see, if they are not disciplined and they become corrupt, then they're not going to do things which enable smooth, effective, and smooth, efficient, and effective systems of service delivery. That's the whole point of governance.
Discipline.
That you have a government which collects taxes, and those taxes are channeled to sufficient means of service delivery, that people get power, they get water, clean water, that they get good transportation systems, that they get good education systems, good health systems, they get jobs, that those who are in agriculture, those who are in industry, those who want to invest and prosper. That's what a country is supposed to be. All that has to be built on a firm foundation of strong institutions. The army being a critical institution, and intelligence services and the police. And therefore, to me, I didn't think that there needed to be any compromise. Then, and even now, I don't think there should be any compromise.
Okay,
because it's basically, once you have discipline in the army, in police, intelligence services, and in the public sector, civil service, and there is that channeling of resources of the nation, including tax revenues, into the right channels of service delivery, you have a good country, a stable country.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
not an area where there should be any compromise, by anybody, by the way.
Because, you know, what rather confuses people here, especially the younger generation,
yes,
is how you, Muntu, leaving campus, joining a struggle, when your father was a UPC diehard, in fact, a closest friend to Apollo Milton Obote. It's not just alleged, it is factual that when you got injuries in the bush, they brought you here, treated, and again you escaped Seka Hospital.
Yeah. But the government didn't get to know. They were not aware.
I'm looking at the courage.
It was clandestine.
And you escaped.
Yes.
How stubborn is this young man of barely 23 or thereabout, running back, that makes you different from the generation that we have now, that cannot even come and speak truth to power? What was driving
you? See, the alternative, there were three alternatives. And always those are mostly the three options that are open to all of us. One, that you leave the country and go out. There was that opportunity, because I could have gone out.
But your father was in things, like if people would say now, your father was
but one of the options is to go out and look for green pastures.
Maybe,
is to go into government employ.
Which it is alleged
when
that
you have an opportunity.
It is alleged that Obote wanted to employ you.
I could have gone into government. There's no doubt about that. I could even have gone into businesses. But the question is, to what end? Because I've always looked at how do you create a society that is that prospers, where there is peace, and there can't be peace unless there is justice. Because justice is not the. I mean, when there is a lack of justice, eventually there would be degeneration to a point where there would be open conflict. So why become comfortable temporarily, even if you prosper as an individual,
there comes a
and
time.
then eventually there is an implosion and you don't know what happens. I mean, I keep asking people, look like a cartoon.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you have money or you don't have money, everybody is at risk. Everybody is vulnerable. So to me, the issue was, could be
Fighting
government
sustainable and
or
sustainable peace.
fight to ensure that you establish governance that observes the values that we all desire to see: equality before the law, equal opportunities, justice, fairness, transparency in the management of national resources, the observation of rights and freedoms of individuals, and a conducive atmosphere in which people prosper in whatever endeavors they're in, whether they are in commercial agriculture, whether they are in the industries, whatever they want to do, they do in that environment. That's what we have all desired to do. So then, much as we failed, and then we broke ranks because of the weaknesses which had developed, and then we started afresh. And that's exactly now what almost everybody desires.
We are heading there. Now, that in short justifies your joining the struggle.
We believed we needed to have a fresh beginning, a new chapter.
In your line of duty, or if, okay, I think let this be two questions. In your line, after you have broken ranks, do you ever regret having been part of the struggle?
No, I've never. Because there are mistakes which were made at an institutional level, at an organizational level, but it opened also us to have an opportunity to go through experiences that you would never read in a book. So part of me, the growth that I've gone through.
Part of the experience.
It's part of those experiences, yes.
Okay. Now, in your tenure as an army commander back in the day for 9 or 10 years, what was the hardest moment, like 2 or 3 that you remember in particular? Because I would gather somewhere that your falling out with President Museveni began with when you were just 1 year as army commander, and the RPA people escaped when you were in command, and perhaps
that was 1991.
1991, when the I think the likes of Uganda and Regima and others.
It was a mass exodus.
Yeah, that exodus. That is when the president began to have issues with you internally. Did we ever hear about that?
Actually, we never had any misunderstanding in regard to that, because he was aware, I wasn't.
But General, you see, that's the beauty of time. That when you have time, and I have learned this from you. You have always said that once you give time to an orange tree, you tell what is a lemon from
an orange,
mango, So President Museveni was in UN, and he was asked the very question. He said he did not know about the exodus of
he didn't know
about the rest.
He didn't know the exodus. I rang him. I invited other heads of services, intelligence services, in the office in which I used to operate at Uganda Club. Called him and informed him
about the exodus of Regima and the team.
He didn't know about that. What he knew was that there was that desire, because he had been in touch to go. Always, I think for quite a while, he was in touch with the senior commander at that time, the late Fred Regima. And he was trying to negotiate with the late Habyarimana, because he was telling him, look, let the Rwandese refugees come back to the country. And the argument on the other side was the country was too small, and the refugees could not go back.
How many were they for?
And then General Museveni was proposing that, okay, just give them passports so that they have a sense of belonging. So there was that. Now it seemed the RPA had different ideas, but didn't want to tell him or tell anybody else, because it was a closely held operation that they pulled off. So when they moved, he was not aware.
When did you get the information yourself as the army commander?
The next
After
day.
They had left the border, or when they were still in transit?
Actually, when they had almost reached the border, because the first intelligence information we got was when they were passing through Mbarara.
You with your ammunitions as an army commander?
You know, there were quite a number of them who were in command. Battalion commanders, brigade commanders, and normally the origin of movement orders they have.
They could still process their own movement orders without any question.
And then they would move. And you see, if you are coming, for example, from the east, from Kampala, people can easily believe you're going to Kampala, either headquarters or something like that.
Or between Kampala and Masakari.
So when they got to
Kajitumba,
Mbarara, that's when
we sense danger.
Information was got. But you see, after Mbarara, it's just an hour to the border. So when they got there, and of course the incidents which happened, the first attacks, the death of the late...
the death of assassination of General Jema.
And of course the first operation where they are literally... the combat operation they got involved in, they were quite costly in terms of casualties and all that. And then when General MUSEVENI came back, there was engagement. Because now it
amongst the three of you, PRA, yourself as the army commander and the president, or between you and the president?
The president
and the PRA leadership
had to do analysis. What happens now?
Now that they have moved and attacked.
It's now a diplomatic problem.
Yeah.
They have moved without his knowledge or anybody else's knowledge.
With your ammunition.
So you are dealing now with
a global problem.
A situation. And of course there were different alternatives. Could have cut off
but they said
links.
We read that you considered to cut off, and what transpired later alone, I think it's known to you and Mr. MUSEVENI for having either you pretended to have cut off Kajitumba, they shouldn't come back and stay there, or because later alone, General, I read, because the beauty is that I am a very passionate researcher, that you gave out, not you in particular, as an institution, as a country, that you gave out Mbarara, Makenke Barracks as their command center.
Not Makenke, no. They weren't in the barracks. They had offices which were outside, where they would coordinate their efforts. Because once the decision was made that, you know what, the worst case scenario would be to cut off and let them perish or run back. I think the assessment was that that would cause a bigger problem than if they were given support. And hopefully they are able to take power, which eventually was the case.
Despite some of the
and then the rest was, you know, the efforts which the president engaged in on the diplomatic front, and the green light which we got as an army to sustain support within the means available, until eventually the success of RPF.
So that incident, in your view, did not affect your friendship with the president, with the appointing authority?
No.
Okay.
That one, because one, the decision was immediate, maintaining support.
Okay.
Two, he wasn't aware of the exit. He was even aware of the negotiations. That one I wasn't part. I wasn't even aware myself about the negotiations which were taking place between Uganda and Rwanda with the late Habyarimana. It was kept, I think, closely guarded. So.
Okay. We are with General Mugisha. Some of these questions are hard, and you'll bear the situation that I will ask him.
Because if there was a problem at that point,
he should have sacked you.
I mean, there's no way. There's no way something of that magnitude. If he had become uncomfortable with my command position, that he would let it roll on from 91.
He was waiting for your other mistakes. So I read somewhere that while you, for the first time after the Bush War, you were at Maxon Falls, I think for a family get-together or celebrations, and that's where the bad news found you for being replaced.
In Para.
In Para. Yeah, for being, that's when you were disappointed.
I got a letter.
You got a letter?
Yeah. Later it was brought by General Mujira in a jet ranger. And I read it and I wrote back.
Did the letter have...
It was a normal, because when you are really in command, and more so like myself who had been there for that long, it wasn't that I had any problem with that, because...
Were there suggestions, alternatives in regards to having other...
The same letter where it was like a redeployment from being a commander of the army to cabinet, which has been the trend really, because other than the late General Kazini, all other
Army commanders
commanders who have
eventually
been in
become
the army
cabinet ministers.
have all been redeployed right from the command
Public
position
service.
to become ministers. I don't recall any where there has never been that. Because if I recall,
Saleh did not.
Okay.
Saleh didn't.
But he was appointed.
Immediately after
there was
Saleh.
all a different dynamic there. It's all a different dynamic. But he was appointed at some point to cabinet. And then General Tumine, General
JJ,
General Aronda, General
David Mhozi,
General
Katumba.
Bad, General Katumba, all of them went.
Why did you refuse the cabinet position?
I wrote him, I respectfully, after thanking him for the period he had given me to be in command, I respectfully turned down that and said I would remain in parliament because I had been a representative of one of the 10. I recognize that if I went to cabinet, I would not have free space, having recognized what was happening that period, to express myself. Because in cabinet there's what they call the principle of collective responsibility.
Once cabinet is on any matter,
even if you are disagreeable to whatever has been decided, you must move with what has been, and you must defend it in public.
But you were the army, also that's the same thing, because once your commander-in-chief decides,
But
the same
in the army, I knew I was building an institution. I was building an institution, and you could have influence in the direction in which the institution would be going. Like when you talk about the issue of trying to build the culture of discipline. That one I knew was a very, very critical thing. But in cabinet you are there running a department of government, a ministry. And then you are going to be discussing issues larger than that ministry. And at that point also there were things which were quite, which I knew I wouldn't be able to defend in public.
Like? So
I decided and said, okay, let me go remain in parliament. And I was focusing now on how to exit the army and basically start building afresh in terms of the political process. I was in the army then until 2001. That's when they established East African Legislative Assembly. And I campaigned as an individual, much as there was intense effort to,
go through
stop that. Yes, because they were saying I had not asked for permission from the army. I wasn't, in my own mind, I wasn't going to Arusha as a representative of the army. I was going as a representative of the country, so I didn't have to ask anybody permission. Fortunately, I campaigned. At that time, there are many MPs who were borrowed. And 169 of them voted for me to go to Arusha, and I went where I was until 2006, and then second term until 2011, I think, 2011. And initially, we didn't have party, so I went on individual merit. So second round, I went as a representative of FDC with the Honorable Dan Ogalo. Yeah. And 2004, because I had exit from, imagine if I was in cabinet, and in 2004, I was trying to go into the opposition. Because I was building, therefore, I was building towards exit. 2004, when they opened up space for parties, and we had to retire.
How easy
at that time, we were still observing the law.
How easy was it for you to retire? Was it a forced retirement, or you considered
Because the law was observed strictly. The law to leave uniform to retire before you join any political party. All who are in uniform, including General MUSEVENI, General Tafire, General Mwezi, General Mozesali, myself, all those. We had to retire.
With the justification that we are going into
politics. Partisan politics. Partisan. Yes. The only difference was I was going to the opposition. And I took the opportunity, when you are retiring, in the commander's office, they give you about 5 minutes to express yourself. And I took the opportunity to inform the army that I was going to politics. I didn't want them to hear on radio or TV or in the press. I was going to politics, and I was going to opposition politics. And then I left.
That's General Mugisha Muntu. He has fought many wars. He fought a war against Obote. Now he's in a war against the one he brought in power. But he's, I mean, a civil war, not an armed struggle. General, you come here, you now join FDC. But back in the day, when reform agenda was at play, did you in any way participate in support or anything with
2001, I only participated in trying to influence opinion inside the system because they had wanted to block Dr. Kizza Besigye from running. I remember there's even a time when he invited MPs to go listen to him. At there is a space as you enter Sheraton. At the gate on the right, there is space there. There is like a small hall. Invited MPs to go there. And I found some of the system operatives trying to discourage MPs. And I was saying, why? Why are you doing that? It's individual merit. Let's hear
what he says.
The message. You may disagree with the messenger, but listen to the message.
Because how do you disagree with something you haven't
How
had?
do you disagree with something you don't have? You know, there were many people. And specifically, I was busy going to do something. Specifically, I had to go there so that the other MPs, get courage. So we went and had him. At that time, even internally in meetings, my insistence was that this is individual merit. I remember there's in NRC, there are those who are saying that General Museveni should be declared a sole candidate.
As early as 2001?
Yes. And there was a lot of, debate and discussions, and we said, no, that can't happen. That would actually contravene the law. It can't be a sole candidate because there is space for others who want to participate. And in that case, Dr. Kizza Besigye, as an individual, had a right to run. And then that's when they manipulated the message and say, there's a word they substituted, saying General Museveni should become a sole candidate. They used another word, saying, I don't recall exactly, but like encouraging those who are in the movement to support him. I didn't participate in that election, but I expressed my disagreement with the things which were being done. Because I remember even after the election, a team of officers, about 3 or 4, who knew me, who were in the system, I think they were kind of encouraged to come and try to convince me to be on board.
On their board?
the system.
Their system, the movement system.
I remember 2 or 3 days before the voting day 2001, one of the radio stations, Simba Radio specifically, sent out an announcement. I've never found out who sent it, but it must have been from maybe the security services or from the secretariat. They read 5 names of us, generals, advising the public, encouraging the public to vote for General Museveni.
Even your name?
And my name was included. So someone rang me and told me about it. I hadn't heard it myself, so I had to ring Radio Simba, talk to the manager of the radio, and said, I want to send a counter message, which fortunately they read, saying, General Muntu, I'm not part. I recognize that all these candidates are standing on their individual merit. Being in uniform, I cannot encourage the public for whom to vote. Okay. They should exercise their right and freedom to vote for whoever they want to vote for. And I sent it.
And you
fortunately, they read it, and I left it at that. I didn't participate in the open. I respected the uniform. I didn't want to be involved in the yes, no. But I could see that even by then, that we were losing direction. 96 in Ntungamo. There was a lot of problems there. Also, again, people were running on individual merit. And I come from the district. I could avoid maybe things elsewhere, but I couldn't avoid politics around where I come from. I mean, people would be ringing me, coming to me, and all that.
Opinion.
So I had sent a message to General Museveni and said, I request you to call for a meeting of the chiefs of security. So we went there I think it was in Kisozi. And I asked him, I said, I don't want to get involved in this, but it's in my backyard. So I would request that the army doesn't participate, the police doesn't participate, and intelligence services. Let whoever wins, win. And if they make a mistake, there will be another time when they can correct their mistake politically. We agreed. And surprisingly enough, a week after that, they sent Mururi Mukasa as the Minister of State, General Kale, at that time, who was, I think, a special assistant to the presidency, I think, with, I think, a company. I don't remember. It was maybe close to a company of military police. I couldn't understand. You agree on something and they do something else? So I could see that we're really losing direction. Of course, they went there and interfered in the elections, and there was an uproar. Ntungam was about to break off at that time from the system. He detected. So he called for a meeting. There were about maybe 200, 300 people, opinion leaders from Ntungam. I was still in uniform.
So it was the same bubble of now.
I was still in uniform, but I knew that if I didn't speak, the moment would be lost. So I told him, I said, look, there are problems in the system. There are cracks. If you don't call senior people to discuss this issue, to see how to resolve these contradictions, we're going to get a bigger problem down the road where we're heading. And I left it at that. I think, you know, one of the things that, of course, pisses him off is telling him things in public. But I also knew that if I don't tell him, I didn't feel that it was. I didn't feel it right that if you sit with people and agree on something,
they can do
that you go and do something contrary. I really, if you are going to change position, you need to invite the same people and say because of this and this and that, we would rather do this. You don't do that, but he does it. Unfortunately, he operates in an environment where there are people who are not bold enough. Otherwise, if they were enough, he wouldn't be running a country as if he's running his own homestead.
Okay. You know. We have heard from General Muntu, but we still have some few minutes for him to share some of, to answer some of the toughest questions that we are yet to enter. Let's go back to Arusha briefly, maybe in a minute also. Do you think your participation, you as a collective and other MPs in the region, in regards to the East African community, did something useful? Because up to now, we still ask questions why the region isn't united as a bloc. Was there a will?
Most of the leaders lack the will to cede powers. East African community can't succeed as a regional integration project unless the component parts, the countries, are able to cede powers, some powers to the center. So they paid lip service. And they are so short-sighted to concentrate only on the domestic concerns without recognizing that actually if there is a effective integration, that it will boost even the efforts at the domestic level. Because if you have an integrated market of 300 million plus, and the resources that are, across all the now 7, 8 countries, this country would be an economic and political powerhouse. Its voice would be heard even on a global scale. But they are so narrow-minded, most of the leaders, as maybe, I think it was the late Mwalimu Julius Nyerere who said that, there are many African leaders who want to be big fish in small ponds, rather than become small fish in large ponds. That's the mentality, unfortunately, in many parts of this continent. The potential in this region is absolutely even mind-boggling if it was tapped into. But my hope is that there will be a generation of leaders where you can find like 4 or 5 out of the 8 who are so focused, laser focused on the integration process. The outcomes of which once they, because they had so far done, they signed the Customs Union Protocol, which works well. The fears actually were basically unfounded, because when they signed the customs union protocol, all the countries at that time, I think there were 3 or 5. At that time, there were 5. All of them benefited. The second stage was common market. That's where they stalled. Because common market, they let free movement of goods, but not labor. But you must open also for labor.
Should move concurrently.
Yes, concurrently. So they are scared, and they don't look at a situation, for example, like if you look at an example like USA, which is integrated 50 or 52 states. And movement of labor and capital, you can move from New York, you can go to California, any of those states. That's what made America a powerhouse, an economic, political powerhouse. Here they stalled.
Just goods.
Yes, and therefore it more or less slowed down, going to the next stage of a monetary union.
Which is taking
And of
forever.
course the last stage would have been political integration. But now, with all the countries immersed in their local problems, I think this effort can only be effectively moved forward with new leaders, hopefully who have new thinking, who look at things in a global way rather than in a narrow way, as has happened with a number of leaders who have been in power since that time.
If I may ask you in a minute, in fact even in half a minute, I have interviewed Professor Piero Lumumba, and he's of an opinion that even the nucleus block of Uganda, Kenya, and TZ isn't as united. It was another mistake to bring some of other troubled countries like South Sudan, DRC, Burundi, of course. What is your view?
It would have been more effective to integrate more efficiently and effectively if the 3 plus the 2, when they were 5, to integrate at the common market and perhaps also at the monetary union. It would have been easier now to bring others on board.
Do you find
but that never happened because Rwanda and Burundi, in terms of population, in terms of land mass, weren't such huge countries that they would impact if the 3 countries work closely together, Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. But now, you deal with reality. You deal with things as they are, not as they ought to be. Now, they are 8. So they must readjust and see how to still move together, because it is still possible. If there are leaders who really are looking beyond themselves and looking at countries, looking at even the larger picture of almost the existential threat that we face as a people, as Africa, and also even as a region. Because see, there's so much demand from all over the world for what we have in Africa. So if you get leaders who are sleeping through it, we can easily be recognized, not direct, in terms of having troops and governors here from outside, but that our policies can be tailored to those who would be exploiting our resources if you have leaders who collaborate. That's what I can't understand. I hear Gen. MUSEVENI always talking about chiefs of the old who let Africa be colonized. You're just doing the same things, because if you break down your own people, because if you can buy your own people, what makes you think that the outside that wants to exploit us wouldn't buy them? Because for them, those who are bought, it's not who is buying them. It is the money. And the ones who come from outside will even pay them more than what you have, what you pay them. Can you look at members of parliament, 100 million.
Yeah, perhaps.
100 million is what? About $25,000.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to compromise the country will give much more than that. So if you have broken down people that you can buy them at $25,000 or $30,000, what about the other one who will come and give them maybe 200,000 or $500,000? The key ones to influence policy in their favor. To find that you remain a source of raw materials. So I simply can't understand why he's not able to compare these two things. Let's talk about chiefs who sold us out by accepting beads and mirrors, and then you compromise society to a point where there are no more leaders who take a firm stand to fight for the rights and and freedoms of people. And then they are there. Completely, even when he exits, because he's going to exit, he needs to go, when he leaves power or when he leaves this planet, to know that he has left a class of political leaders who are highly vulnerable. Same thing which happened with the chiefs is what he's doing.
Elite chiefs.
Yes,
that could be
at
the
that time.
I mean, they could, the difference would be that these ones are elite chiefs, the other ones weren't educated. So
He seems not to be aware of the two situations. They are similar.
And, we are with General Muntu, and he's facing the nation every Friday at 5 p.m. We bring you different guests. Now, in our few remaining minutes, I have very key questions for you here. In particular, I will summarize these in this way. We have heard, the whole public has heard of your struggle. So you are in FDC. You have issues with some members in FDC. I remember vividly.
Not some members, strategy.
Okay, strategy. Yes, okay, let's take it that way.
Yes.
Yes, on strategy.
Yeah.
And I remember vividly, you said that you had irreconcilable differences. You are on record.
Yeah.
Broad daylight in Nambole, you said there were irreconcilable differences.
Yeah.
So the Muntu, with the irreconcilable differences back in the day in Nambole,
Yes.
meets with some of the people of the other strategy
Yes.
of late at
Yes.
Africana.
Yes.
Can you kindly justify your meeting?
Most people seem not to recall that when we were competing with the Honorable Patrick Oboy, his campaign message was, look, we've been paralyzed because of infights over strategy. We have two different strategies. And we are saying for us to be stable from now, delegates must vote for which strategy the party now applies from this point onwards. Once they vote for one strategy, that's it. And the delegates voted for the strategy of defiance, because the promise was that, okay, we are massaging the regime, because of those of us who are talking about going down to build infrastructure, organizational infrastructure. They were saying it was taking too long, but we are massaging the regime, and therefore they wanted someone who was going to throw out the regime. And Honorable Boy, of course, promised 100 days that would be done. I had no problem with that. He was voted for. I congratulated him. And we now have to consider, do we stay? Because we had three options. If we stayed, we'd have to keep quiet. Because if we kept on fighting, having heard the campaign and having heard or seen the voices of the voters, it would have been really very inconsiderate of us to remain pushing for a different strategy. So we would have just maybe simply stopped or decided to fight, and the paralysis remains. And if the country was not captured in 100 days, then we could be seen as the problem. The other option was exit, which we exercised. We exit and started afresh. And we're doing all that openly. We'll keep on briefing the party leader. Now we're going to do this. Right from the time when I went there and handed over 1 week, the report, and said, I'm handing over peacefully, but we are going to go around the country to find out the next move, which we did. I think it was over like 6 months. And then we decided, you know what now, we need to exit, which we did. But also in the campaigns, I knew what was happening around some of the individuals within the party. And I would be telling the party, be very careful. I never mention names in my style. I want things to become self-evident by themselves. Because if you mention like a name and then you raise accusations of what you know, it becomes your word against them. I didn't want to go in that direction. So we exit and we started building. I promised Honorable in the last meeting we held before we exit, because we gave him a report, a written report of what we had gathered and made a decision. Said we're going to exit. By promise, I said, Patrick, we are not going to undermine you. We are not going to provoke you. We are not going to put up any fight against you as a party, as an individual, which we fulfilled. We had asked to have a committee that would manage the post-separation, that we could have 101 or 2-2, so that we would manage any situation that would arise, so that we maintain peace between ourselves. They never paid attention to that, and therefore we found it was incumbent upon us to be the ones to restrain ourselves. Because we know what happens in politics. We know that there are people who would not restrain themselves, which exactly happened in that way by some of the colleagues who remained in Janankumbi, and they really started salvos, against us for 6 months on a sustained basis. And we had to sit and restrain ourselves. We did not respond to any form of provocation. We did not reply. We didn't do anything. And we have consistently applied that. So eventually, unfortunately for FDC, they went through another state of crisis internally, and there was a separation.
Second separation in just one, literally in a few years, less than.
So after a while, the colleagues who now eventually have become PFF did analysis of the political terrain, and I think eventually found out over a period of time that we were really not, hostile. First,
as earlier presumed.
As earlier was being propagated. And when we interacted over a period of time, said, why don't we combine effort? One, situation in the country is so, worrying. And we are mature people. And the very reason why we're in politics is for the country. So we agreed and entered into a memorandum of understanding. One, to resuscitate hope. Because hope is one thing which is lacking now in our population. Resuscitate hope, rebuild confidence in people, but also teach lessons, practical lessons, for people to understand that you can disagree politically, but you don't have to be hostile to each other, and that you can regroup, and that you can work together. Okay. So this is one of our intentions, besides the MOU, which is around this electoral process, but the manner in which we will execute it, the manner in which we will advance it, and I believe that there is absolutely no reason why there would be any form of disagreements, or if they are there, to handle them maturely. As practical teaching efforts. Because our country, okay, we look at General MUSEVENI, is an individual, but what he has done over a period of 30 plus years is create or exacerbate the culture which was already, in the country, where individuals fight and the whole country goes into disarray because of two different individuals having different interests, many times which are selfish interests. And also to create a state where opposing political forces almost become enemies to each other. That's wrong. You can disagree, but disagree in a way where maintain a state of maturity in how you handle the disagreements. Because we exist in one geographical entity. We will live here. We will have to live here. So you must see how do you
manage your conflicts.
And two people who talk about democracy. How will you establish democratic governance without having tolerance? Because tolerance is a critical factor. It's a part and parcel of a democratic process. So if you talk about it, but you don't practice it, how will you? Yes, and practical experience, practical things teach much better than talk about concepts on radio, on TV, or whatever. When people see something practiced, I have a sense that this is the right direction to take. We'll continue building on that, because the biggest challenge by any group which takes power, hopefully it will be people who are mature, who really understand the biggest challenge that we have, and most of the challenges at the mindset level. It's not the roads. It's not infrastructure. It's not the lack of jobs. All those can be done. But changing the way people think, rebuilding their hope, rebuilding confidence in them. Because, for example, creativity and innovation get sparked off in people who believe in themselves, who are confident in themselves. But when you break down a person to a point where they have to kneel and beg for 2,000 shillings, 3,000 shillings, even when such a person, even 10,000 shillings, like now in the electoral process, as you see, even when such a person is gifted by God with intelligence to create or to innovate, the breakdown of his will or her will becomes a big impediment. Because they can't see themselves being able to do something that can be even, which can overwhelm people and say, what? This young man or that young woman did this? That is impeded in the current situation. Why? Because at the mindset level, they've been broken down to a point where it is only survival.
Not even for the fittest now. Anyhow, we have very few minutes, very few, as you hear. I want to ask you, I think we're closing with 2 or 3 questions. First of all, some people, okay, what was your plan had the PFF team not come to you to have this discussion as ANT?
Would have continued building. That's what we do.
Did you intend to contest for president even under ANT before PFF approach?
Depending on the analysis of the situation internally within the leadership. Okay. Because one of the things that even why I ran, like in 2021, 2021, we knew that the competition was between NRM and NUP. Yeah. But we also knew that we had a unique message and that we needed to disseminate it. And we know from our experience that every time we disseminate that message, we are planting a seed. And we know that naturally the seed is been growing.
Okay.
And that there's going to be a time of harvest.
Are you bothered about how long the seed is
taking? And therefore, we are hoping that perhaps, if it be the will of God, look at the dynamics of the politics in this country, that it could be a critical factor, us as Alliance for National Transformation. Now, with MOU, with PFF. And perhaps, again, if it becomes possible and if it's in alignment with the will of God, and we deal with another party, if it is, for example, NUP, that we have got common thinking, not only in how to conduct ourselves in this electoral process, but in how to build capabilities that overwhelm the regime, take power, and how to manage it thereafter. Our message is a critical factor, because we're not only looking at the now, we project into the future. And therefore, we have to keep sowing those seeds, not only in the countryside, but also within the political elite.
I'm closing with this question. How do you envision Uganda in these circumstances, where the president doesn't wake up some morning because that's the law of nature?
Yes.
That's one circumstance. The circumstance where the citizens overwhelmingly do their best and replace him even when he's alive.
Yes.
The other circumstance is where you are president. If you could answer those 3 circumstances.
The best option would be to retire General MUSEVENI now. The population needs to make that decision. The worst thing is for General MUSEVENI to
die in power?
Yeah.
What do you think would happen?
Because right now, even the people in the NRM don't know what is happening. There is no succession plan. If you wake up one day,
he will refer to the Constitution General.
Even if he doesn't exit this world, but for example, if he's in a coma and he cannot communicate, he cannot make a decision.
We have a Constitution. We have that Parliament.
Yeah, everybody knows that there is a Constitution, but who believes that that constitutional process would be followed?
Don't you believe in the Constitution itself?
I highly doubt whether it would be followed when you look at the dynamics that are at play now. And therefore, the best thing that those who've been supporting General MUSEVENI for such a long time would make a decision now that the country is more important than all of us. And that therefore, since he has not found it in himself to have the moral courage to retire early enough and guide the process thereafter, they themselves have to retire him for the good of the country. Because the worst thing is the uncertainty that there is. The dynamics to evolve in such a way that we go into a slide and perhaps get into a situation that would be highly regrettable by all of us. People need to put aside their emotions. The country is more important than all of us. Even when they effectively retire him this time around, he has no moral high ground to put blame on them. So they should feel absorbed already for the period that they have supported him.
Okay. That's General Muntu. Next Friday, we'll bring you another person to face the nation on the Alternative Dig Talk, running live on our social media pages. That's the Alternative Uganda, and so Dig Talk TV, and our YouTube channel, the Alternative Uganda. Thank you, General Muntu, for your time. We hope that everything will be better. However, that seed is taking forever. In fact,
it's growing.
That seed is taking forever. I don't know whether the watering can with the water isn't enough, or the ground is not fertile enough for that seed to grow.
One thing I know for sure is that Ugandans will eat of the sweet fruit that comes from that tree that is growing.
He has said it.
Yes.
I can't add a word. See you, Norman. Signs out.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.